Hello, we are your internet historians, and in today's episode, we will be discussing the history behind the movie 42. 42. In 1946, Branch Rickey, legendary manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, defies Major League Baseball's notorious color barrier by signing Jackie Robinson to the team. The heroic act puts both Rickey and Robinson in the firing line of the public, the press, and other players. Facing open racism from all sides, Robinson demonstrates true courage and admirable restraint by not reacting in kind and lets his undeniable talent silence the critics for him. So how'd you guys enjoy the movie?
Oh my God, Harrison Ford played Branch Rickey?
Yes.
That didn't click at all the whole time I was watching it.
I mean, they did obviously
That's
put
too
a lot
funny.
of makeup and made him look
Yeah,
really...
he didn't look like Harrison Ford.
No, definitely not.
No,
I didn't also look to see who played him. Sorry. That was like, so anyways, I thought it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I really liked it for a sports movie, which I'm not into at all, especially not baseball.
I mean,
The thing for me, I remember watching it a long time ago, I think when it first came out. And I remember enjoying it then, but for some reason the second time I didn't enjoy it as much as the first time I'd watched it. I feel like it was kind of slow in some parts. Like there were parts that entertained me a lot, but then some other parts where it was just really slow and I was just like, okay, let's get to the good stuff. But I mean, overall, I did enjoy it. But I just remember really liking it the first time. And then this time I was like, what the heck? Maybe I just was really putting it like, I had some high expectations because I remember really liking it, but I don't know.
Yeah. I was also thinking like maybe I like it more now because of what's going on right now. Like we're watching this because Chadwick passed away recently, and you just like seeing him perform, it just like warms your heart a little bit. And then also like with everything and racism happening right now too, not right now, it's been happening, but like it's just kind of
yeah, definitely. No, because even one of the things that Branch Rickey said in the movie when he was talking about how basically like if a black man were to do a react, because that's why he chose Jackie Robinson, is because he didn't want someone who was going to react or make basically like confirm what people were going to be saying about having a black man in the what is it, MLB, Major League Baseball. Yeah. I was like, but yeah, basically MLB. And so that kind of just I feel like it still rings true, because if people are, protests and all that stuff, it's like if you do that kind of reaction, then people are going to be like, oh, well, that's why, because whatever. So it kind of just like has a lot of parallels for today's climate.
Right.
I think Chadwick did very well in the movie. Obviously, I don't know. He really embodied that character, I felt.
Yeah, he did.
And honestly, he was looking pretty good in the movie. I was like,
oh my God. You know what's crazy to me? I was reading interview with Jackie Robinson's wife, Rachel, and it was so funny reading it because this movie came out in 2013, and she's like, oh, I really like that they cast two unknown actors to play us, and I'm like, Chadwick Boseman unknown? Like that's just so weird to think about, but I don't know.
It is just I remember when I watched the movie for the first time too, I didn't recognize him, but then I think when he became the Black Panther, I knew who he was then, and I know he's come up with other movies and stuff, but then I recognized him because I had already previously watched 42.
Yeah. And Rachel did also say that when she watched the film, watching Chadwick was like watching Jackie. He did such a stunning job that, she felt like that was Jackie on screen. So I thought that was so super crazy. And then the other thing that Chadwick really does is that like he really captures like the emotion behind it. Like obviously like we feel the type of frustration just from the other characters taunting him and Jackie. But then the way he can like really show you through his eyes, through just like the little subtle things that he does to show how like he's just internally frustrated. And even that scene where he went into is that the runway? What do you call that?
Oh, like on like the hallway, basically.
The hallway, where
like, before they get to like the locker rooms or whatever. Yeah, that one. I was like,
dang, what is it called? It's not the dugout.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Wait, baseball terms.
Yeah. But in that area where he like hit his bat, like I felt that. I think everybody who saw that scene like really could feel that.
Yeah, that was really sad too. Because I mean, you have to know like to have that type of reaction, how like hard and the type of conflict he must have been feeling inside, but like trying to hold it in because that's why they got him, and he said that he wasn't going to publicly react, at least to like the other coaches and players and all that. So I was like, damn, that is tough.
But that's really tough to do.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, should we start talking about Jackie?
Yes. I guess I'll just say it real fast because this happened before he even... Well, I mean, he was always interested and good at sports, but this happened before he was in the minor leagues.
Right, yeah.
So basically, I mean, they kind of briefly mention it in the film as well, just in kind of passing, like, oh, he was in the military or whatever. And but looking into it, he was...
the military at the time like a little colorblind?
No. I mean, they said they were, but they weren't actually. Like they had, so the whole reason, he was basically known because he got like court-martialed when he was in the military, and because they were on, he was trying to get on a bus, and supposedly this bus was supposedly unsegregated already. So like they were supposed to be letting people just, sit wherever they wanted. But when he got on, he tried to sit in the front, and I believe and the bus driver was like, no, like you can't sit up here. And he was, he held his ground and was like, yeah, I'm going to sit anywhere. And so the bus driver kind of gave in and didn't say anything. But when they got to their destination, there was military police there waiting to basically interrogate him and arrest him and all that stuff. So
that, and they mentioned that in the movie.
Yeah, and it was kind of very briefly that they mentioned it, but I mean, it's a part of his life, and I think that kind of really shows who he was as a person, of him not like holding his ground in his beliefs and all that. But he was acquitted of the charges because basically it was just saying that he was like being rude during questioning, basically, is like really what they kind of charged him, which was stupid. And I think they also were trying to charge him for being a drunk, which he never drank. And I was like, are you serious?
Yeah. That was interesting.
Like,
what was interesting to me too was that because of the trial and how long it took, he never was actually deployed.
I see that. I didn't realize that he was never out there. I thought he was, but I think I did see something that he would have been a part of some like historical like group if he had stayed in. But I think it's some BS, man, because they're trying to pretend like they're all, unsegregated and all that stuff. But then they do all this, and it's just stupid. But yeah.
Well, yeah, because even him trying to join the officers program, like that's what Lisa was saying, is that like it didn't specifically say that, they didn't allow Black people to be officers, but they drug out the process, and they weren't going to give it to him right off the bat. Him and someone else that I can't remember, even though he was like overqualified. For sure.
So Jackie's brother recognized his athletic talent and inspired Jackie to pursue an interest in sports. One of his brothers, Mac, was a silver medalist at the 1936 Olympics. So he came from basically a family of athletes, star athletes. Okay. In high school, Jackie played football, baseball, track, and basketball. Football, basketball, track, and baseball in high school. He was in the varsity team, lettered in all four of them. In four. Wait, is there four? Oh, yeah, in all four of them. I'm sorry. So in high school, most of his teammates were white. So he did play with like a integrated team. Then he went to Pasadena Junior College, where he continued with basketball, football, baseball, and track. He broke the school broad jump record held by his brother Mac. He was elected at the All Southlands Junior College team for baseball and selected as the region's MVP. He was also one of 10 students named to the school's Order of the Mass Dagger Award, and it's to students performing outstanding service to the school and whose scholastic and citizenship record is worthy of recognition. So towards the end of his academic life at Pasadena Junior College, Frank, one of his three brothers who he felt the closest to, was killed in a motorcycle accident. And that event motivated Jackie to pursue an athletic career at UCLA, where he can also stay close to his family. So in 1939, he graduated from Pasadena Junior College and started UCLA. He was the first athlete to win varsity letter in 4 sports: baseball, basketball, football, and track. He was one of 4 black players on the football team. So at this time, because of that, that made UCLA like a very integrated, place, having 4 black players on their football team. It's really funny because out of all the sports, he's actually he was considered not a very good baseball player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he was a bad baseball player. He just wasn't the best.
No, it's just his worst sport.
He wasn't the best at it.
And everything he did.
I don't know if you guys know who Simone Biles is. Do you guys know Simone? Yeah, it's like when they say gymnast. Bars is her weakest event, yet she gets like a gold medal on that. You're like,
yeah, like I don't think he was terrible at it, but he was not. That wasn't his like strongest thing. And there was other players that I think they thought should have been chosen over Jackie, but to be the one to break the color barrier.
And the other 2 guys, which I should have wrote their names down. I think it was mostly Satchel Paige, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Really, was it the one that held the resentment more?
I didn't look up that who resented him more. Somebody said that Josh. Oh, okay. Well, Josh passed away like young, and like someone said it's because he was so heartbroken.
But I think the reason why he was chosen over, I mean, I don't know for sure, but like from what I have read, it's because of Jackie's I guess strength and the way he can handle himself when it's like he's put up against people who are racist and all of that stuff. So I'm I think that's why they chose him.
I mean, you never know. You don't. I mean, who knows if Mr. Ricky ever even spoke to either of them?
Yeah, I mean, because. Which they don't portray in the movie, but Jackie wasn't the only black player that Ricky had brought to the training. I mean, I guess it just the plot would have gotten a little convoluted if they included him. But yeah, I think it kind of goes back to, which I don't really know what the demeanor of Paige and Gibson was, and it sounded like he was scouting a lot of the quote unquote Negro leagues at the time because he already had his mindset that he wanted to bring a black player in because he was like Brooklyn's the best place time and now
and that guy passed away. Well, and I don't think that was the biggest reason why, but I think that that helped catalyst the event and motivate them more.
Yeah, so I think even though he wasn't necessarily, which is kind of echoing what you said, but even though he wasn't necessarily the best player in the Negro League, he was, because the quote that he said, gosh dang, I'm really bad at these quotes all of a sudden, and I thought I had it written down. The one where he says that, like, oh, so you don't want a Negro man or whatever with the guts to fight, and he says, I want a Negro player that has the guts not to fight. That was actually something that Ricky did say, which so he knew, and also too with the military background and stuff like that, like he knew that when the time came, Jackie would be able to stand his ground, but he also just needed someone that was more calculated, and maybe the other 2 guys weren't that way, but yeah, that's how it seemed anyway.
Basically, Jackie's life before he started at the Dodgers was that it was mostly football, and he did coach basketball at a Samuel Hudson College in Austin, Texas, and then he got into a Negro league, and that was really hectic. Like they even said that his they were just more disorganized. Like he was used to like the structured environment in college sports, and then they were like all disorganized and had a hectic schedule, all that stuff. And then the Boston Red Sox held a trial for black players, and apparently it was just to me, they didn't say this. It just sounded like it was a publicity stunt. You know what I mean? Because they were. Yeah. It sounded like it was just kind of done for show, but they really didn't have many managers there to see.
Yeah, they kept saying it was a humiliating experience for him, but they didn't really exactly describe what happened. They just said it was humiliating, and he was.
Well, I think it's because it was like a display, so like you're going basically there to perform, and I feel like that's what it seemed like. He was just there
I
for like
wonder.
pictures or like for press
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So it
exactly.
wasn't actually about like
Yeah.
him joining a team. It was just more
Mhm.
about him showing up so he can make it seem like another team is doing something good when they really weren't.
Yeah. He even said that more than 14 years later, in 1959, the Red Sox became the last major league to integrate its roster. I was like, that's
Yeah.
super
That's what I was gonna
crazy.
say, yeah.
And then later, then he had his conversation with Mr. Ricky, and he joined the minor league of the Montreal Royals. He was going to get paid $600 a month, and that is $8,521 now.
Right? I looked that up too. So I'm like, how much money is that now? Yeah, and he went on, I guess, when he was like at the top of the top playing for the Dodgers, he was making like $35,000 at that time, which is over $300,000, which is crazy.
Yeah, I know.
That's a lot of money for the time.
So let's.
I mean, it's a lot of money now, but like not as much as they're really making.
Yeah, they're making millions and millions and millions.
Yeah, for sure.
But for that time, I'm like, shoot, I would take 8,000 a month.
Oh, hell yeah!
Yeah, that's what I was
like,
saying.
Especially if you're the first Black player to do it too, you're kind of
but just. I want to look this. Hold on, let me look this up because I want to see what other players were making. I just realized
I know
didn't see what other players during that time were making in comparison to him. Because what if they were making more?
Well, that's what they were saying too, because they were saying, well, on why Mr. Ricky was doing this, and he kind of said, well, because there's a lot of great players, a lot of great Black players out there. I'd love to utilize them. And the second thing he said, it was like for business because you can get them for a cheaper price. And as sad as that is, it's like.
So I just looked it up, and they seem to be making around the same amount. Jackie was making less than them, but I mean, it's still around. Like, yeah, he was making less, but they weren't making like that much more either. Like 40 something thousand in comparison. Did you want to talk more about breaking the color barrier?
Yes. Where do I begin? So obviously at that time, so the color barrier that we're talking about, or the color line, whatever they call it, it's basically an unwritten rule in baseball since the late 1880s. There has not been a Black player in the Major League Baseball teams. It's just been white players, and that's it. And so the crazy part to me about it is that it's an unwritten rule. It is a rule that they just decided, and everyone kind of went with it, and no one was brave enough to kind of break that. I know one of the baseball leaders, like, they openly opposed it, and like they said that it's because of legitimate reasons, which I'm like rolling my eyes at.
Like, what are they?
Yeah, exactly. What are they? So obviously at that time, there's a lot of segregation. They even just showed it in the movies how, they had the different bathrooms. And
well, that's one thing I wanted to ask, because in the film, they portray it as if Jackie and his wife like aren't used to being treated in that way. And so I was trying to look up like what was like segregation or racism like in California, because that's where they were living previously. But it seems like there was still racism and segregation to some, like, I guess maybe it wasn't as like, what is it, like as prevalent as it is in other places, but I'm like, it was still there. So they would have known, and like, they were segregated. So I'm like, I don't know. Cause when she was, the scene where she was staring at the bathroom when it was saying white people or something only. And so I was like, is it really like that much of a difference? But
I think
it just depended on the year and depended on the state, because obviously some states were going to be stuck in their ways. So I'm sure not all of them, but like mostly northern states and mostly western states definitely were more lax and desegregated, especially compared to where they were, which was that in Louisiana?
I forget. They were like all over when they were traveling.
I think they ended up taking the bus from New Orleans all the way.
Because I was going to say, like I think in Southern California, it just sounds like it was a little bit more liberal, I guess, because they even said how.
But he was on a Black team, wasn't he? When he was in Pasadena or whatever. I think there was segregation, and even let me see if I can find it.
Well, because I said that when he was on the football team at UCLA, he was one of the 4 black football players, and that was actually like really big. You know, they were like the college that had the most integrated team. So I think just being in an area,
you kind of just depended
I
on
think
the situation.
I think that
I know,
maybe
but
they were.
I was trying to look up more stuff like about it, like if there was like whites only like bathrooms, but I could not find really anything on it. So, but I mean, I just feel like to me it seems like they're saying that there was none of that in California, which I feel like, I mean, that's not the truth. I don't know. So I just wanted to talk about that because I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of not weird, but it's like, I mean, I can understand like, oh, they're not used to it being as like apparent and like upfront as it was in all those other places.
I feel like it's just like how it is right now. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Nicole, you and I are from the Central Valley. You knew the Central Valley is a little bit more conservative. And in the bigger cities like San Francisco, LA, they're a little bit more liberal. They're a little more open-minded. They can actually like, you know, it's like that city life, that culture that's like a little bit different.
Or yeah, I guess like, and I guess I'm thinking how it is today. Like we always think, because you know, we all live in California, so we think there none of that is here, but it's just more, I feel like it's more hidden. So people aren't as upfront about it, and they're not very like open about if they are racist, which is, I mean, is a good thing. But I guess maybe that's what they weren't used to, people being very outspoken about their racism versus other states where they're more, you know, they'll just tell it to your face and they're not afraid to let you know what they think. So yeah, I guess in that sense, it hasn't changed.
Yeah. As we all know, Jackie got signed on to the Brooklyn Dodgers, which was hella cool. When he signed on, so he signed on in 1945 for the 1946 season. At Jackie's debut, there was a crowd of 26,623 spectators, and more than 14,000 of them were black. Black fans began to attend Dodgers games and abandon their Negro teams. There was tension in the Dodger clubhouse, and some Dodger players insinuated that they would sit out rather than play alongside Jackie. The plotting ended when the Dodgers manager Leo DeRocher told them, "I don't care if the guy is yellow or black or if he has stripes like a fucking zebra. I'm the manager of this team, and I say he plays. What's more, I say he can make us all rich. And if any of you cannot use the money, I will see that you are all traded." Basically, what I'm kind of going at here is just the fact that there was just tension all around. You know, some people were happy for him, some people weren't. But overall, one of the biggest things is that the Dodgers supported him. Mr. Rickey did get the approval from the board of directors of the Dodgers to sign on a black player. So they were going to be behind him 100%. Same with the manager, like everyone, the upper management of the Dodgers, I guess is the best way I can put it, were behind him, and they were going to like stand by him, even if the players were not.
I was just going to say real quick, because you briefly, and I kind of the movie too, kind of briefly touched on how he played for Montreal first before the Dodgers. One thing that I was reading quite a bit was just how much more welcoming Montreal was compared to the States.
But
I was like, wow, Canada's better.
But then it said that the manager, Clay Hopper, he was the manager for Montreal Royals, and he asked Mr. Rickey to assign Jackie to any other Dodgers affiliate, but Mr. Rickey rejected that.
Well, I mean the like Canada as a whole.
Yeah,
like Montreal, like in general, like compared to the reception when you know they were touring and playing for the Dodgers, and I was just like, "Woo, we don't care!" Like, woohoo. So I just thought that was interesting.
There was a press report that the St. Louis Cardinals threatened to strike if Jackie played, and to spread the word across the entire National League. After it was published, National League President Ford Frick. These names, guys, I can't handle. Ford Frick and the baseball commissioner, Happy Chandler, let it be known that any striking players will be suspended. Quote, "You will find that the friends that you think have in the press box will not support you, that you will be outcasts. Ford Frick was quoted saying, "I do not care if half the league strikes. Those who do it will encounter quick retribution. All will be suspended, and I don't care if it wrecks the National League for 5 years. This is the United States of America, and one citizen has as much right to play as the other." And the Cardinals players denied that they were planning a strike, and writer Warren Corbett said that the Ford speech never happened. So it's like kind of confusing to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
I was like, well, did it happen or didn't? Like, it's like
this kind of happens a couple times. I've noticed when I was doing like a little bit of research. But regardless, like these type of reports actually helped Jackie in the end, because like people sympathize with him. They kind of would support him, be on his side. Those people would see how like stupid other people are. So then other things we were going to talk about is like he received rough physical play by opponents, and but he did receive some encouragement. Jackie said that Lee Hanley, who played for the Phillies at the time, was the first opposing player to wish him well. Hank Greenberg, a Jewish baseball star who also dealt with some racial stereotyping and backlash, also encouraged Jackie. And even once when they were on first base together during a game, they saw Hank whispering in Jackie's ear, and Jackie later said it was just words of encouragement. Hank also advised Jackie to overcome his critics by defeating them in games. And another person I'm just going to talk about briefly, Larry Doby. He was actually the second Black player to be signed in the major leagues. Him and Jackie talked a lot about their experiences. They frequently talked over the phone, and it just sounded like they were just generally there for each other during this time when they were receiving all this backlash, and they kind of felt lonely, I guess, and during these times, like they at least had each other. So that was something I thought that was really different in the movie. In the movie, it just seems like he's so alone. I forgot there was a quote by some writer who just said that he was like the loneliest player or something like that. But it sounds like it wasn't that bad because, well, it was bad. I'm sorry, it was bad. But he wasn't completely alone. He had Larry that he could call and talk to when times were tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I didn't know that about Larry. I knew there was some other ones that eventually got in, but I didn't know their names. But I think that is important because especially when you are, coming into something new, I think it's important to have someone that you can talk to and relate to. And especially when you guys come from the same background of, both being Black and both coming into the major leagues around the same time. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, they weren't on the same team, but I'm sure they both experienced the tension between both teams so that they could call each other and just like help keep the morale up if they could.
Yeah. That has to be tough.
Yes. For a minute, I thought that like Rachel was his only person that he can kind of console with and like talk to. But it's like there was one other person who actually had the firsthand experience to share and like, talk about with. You guys want to talk about Wendell?
Yeah.
Again, the names, Wendell.
So Wendell, as Lisa was saying, he was kind of someone who was there from the beginning. Well, he helped Ricky kind of steer his decision into choosing Jackie.
If he's credited or uncredited, but at the end of the day, it's reported that he's the one who recommended Jackie to.
Yeah, I don't think he got any credit for it, but I think people know that it was him who put in the word about Jackie Robinson to Ricky.
Did you guys read about his background, which I thought was
he was also into sports, right?
So he was when he was in college, he was the pitcher for his college baseball team, and a major league scout actually approached him and said that he wished he could sign him on, but he couldn't due to baseball's color barrier. So then Wendell later made a promise to himself that he was going to do everything he can to make sure that a Black player could be on the baseball team.
And
so
that's one of the major parts in the movie, not major parts in the movie, sorry, take that back, but that goes against what he actually says. Wendell Smith, Andre Holland's portrayal of him, says that the reason why he did it was because Black writers weren't allowed in the press box. That was the reasoning in the movie, but the real reasoning was that the real character, like you said, wasn't allowed to play.
I think they kind of, it kind of is similar in the sense that he wasn't allowed to do something because of but I think they
Sure,
just kind of obviously altered it to kind of better frame or help the movie. But I honestly didn't think the Wendell character was even a real character until I started looking into it, and I realized he was an actual character, and he was actually the one who kind of was Jackie's companion and you know, traveled with him and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I assumed it was just a character they created for the film.
Yeah. So after he pretty much saw that his any kind of career in baseball was gonna not go well, he started with becoming the sports editor for his college paper, and then he began his professional writing career with the Pittsburgh Courier, which is what he is during even in the movie and during Jackie's like his rookie season or whatever. And then they said,
one thing I have to say about that, sorry, just to jump in, another thing that I was reading, which I thought was strange, was that in the movie, Jackie acts like he's never heard of that paper before, but apparently there were like 3 major black written newspapers, and that him saying that he'd never heard of the Pittsburgh Courier was like the equivalent of saying he'd never heard of the Times. Apparently that's like a really strange thing that they put in the movie that he had no idea.
It's true because
maybe they're trying to make it seem like he's, you know, from California, big city person or whatever. So maybe that's why, I don't know, but
yeah,
maybe.
And then he applied to be a member of the Baseball Writer Association of America, but it was rejected because he worked for the Courier and it wasn't a black owned it wasn't a white owned paper company, which I was like, boo. And then, so the other thing that I was like a little confused about, it was that they said that the Courier actually paid for him to travel with Jackie in 1946 and 1947. In the movie, it said Mr. Ricky arranged everything.
Because I read that Ricky sponsored it.
I know, so that's the other thing that I was confused by. It was that like the same thing.
Maybe they went halvesies.
Yeah, maybe. He also came out with a book called Jackie Robinson, My Own Story in 1948. Also in 1948, his application to join the BBWAA was approved. And that's the other thing is in the movie, they said that he was the first African-American member to join that association. But then actually he's the second behind Sam Lacey. But then that's also confusing because it's like, it's kind of the same. I don't know. It's like, it's hard because it's like, what, did one join in like March and the other one joined in April, you know? Because they both say they joined in 1948. And even like literally it'll say like, yeah, Wendell became the first African-American behind Sam Lacey. I'm like, okay, you don't say first behind somebody, right? So like what technically who is it? I think it is Sam Lacey who received the membership first, and probably Wendell was a close second. I thought like the Wendell character was very, very interesting, and I admire him for pushing what he promised himself to get a black baseball player in the major leagues. Say a little bit more about Mr. Ricky because he's okay. So he was a progressive man, all right? Like
yeah, I was gonna say I think he was portrayed pretty accurately too, and like his gusto.
I mean, I don't know if he's like this cigar smoking.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like I think his passion for wanting to create this type of environment for baseball and, you know, all that stuff was, you know,
pretty... for me, it's like, it just isn't about the breaking the color barrier. He did more than that. So he created the farm system, which is what he did with Jackie Robinson, is that he puts them in a minor league so they can start getting trained. And then once you're good enough, you get moved to the major league. And that actually is still done to this day. I mean, come on, like I feel like I hear about it to this day. I don't watch the baseball that much.
Well, yeah, every most baseball players, they start off in minor league. And then like, so for example, like everyone has their minor league. And then they have the major league one grabs from the minor league. So for example, I think like from Stockton, like the Stockton Ports, I think the A's get their major league players from the Stockton Ports, unless they changed it, I forget. But that's what it was the last time I remember.
But to me, it's like, it's not just baseball. I hear that, and I hear that in like other sports, you know, that's just how you kind of start in a minor, like a little smaller league, and then you go to the big leagues, you know, that's just, and it's crazy to me that like Mr. Ricky kind of started that. And it's so funny because people kind of were against it. They even said that it was going to ruin baseball, but it actually is what keeps baseball alive and also keeps the minor leagues alive, because otherwise people wouldn't really watch the minor leagues, you know. The other thing that he did, he was responsible when he went to the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was responsible for the first full-time spring training facility in Vero Beach, Florida. He encouraged the now commonplace tools like batting cages, pitching machines, and batting helmets, which is crazy because, you know, in the movie, like they all just wear a cap. Oh, I mean, in real life too. He also pioneered the use of statistical analysts in baseball, now known as the Saber Matrix. Mr. Ricky promoted the idea that on-base percentage was more important hitting stat than batting average. So that's super crazy to me that, you know, along with breaking the color barrier, he also, you know, helped integrate the spring training facilities. And then it's like today, like when I was watching the movie, it was a little cringy to see them like with just regular baseball hats, you know, like the helmets I think are really, really important. I think batting cages are really important. And also, what's that movie with Justin Timberlake and Amy Adams?
Yes. Oh my God. That's a really good movie too. What is it called? Oh, The Curve, something with the curve. Something.
Yeah, movie, because when I was watching this and how they were like kind of scouting, or when they were talking about players, what I was thinking about, I was like, why aren't they talking about his stats? Because I know that in that movie, they were talking about how stats are so important, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's called Trouble with the Curve. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. So it's crazy to me that Mr. Ricky, you know, really helped encourage how stats do matter in baseball. Also, the story with Charles Thomas, which he kind of said in the movie, how he didn't do more than, you know, for that black player. It was a real story. He was a coach or manager for like Ohio College, and Charles Thomas was a black athlete, and they refused lodging at a hotel, and that really pissed off Mr. Ricky. And he said later, I may not be able to do something about racism in every field, but I can sure do something about it in baseball.
I don't remember what his story was in the movie word for word, but when I was reading it, it was so sad. He said that he ended up putting up the kid in his room with him, and like he didn't even really realize how awful it was to be black or whatever, because until he like saw him like trying to like rub off his skin or something like that. Like erase his skin color, because he was just so upset about it. I was like, geez Louise.
It's things like that.
I wasn't sure if they mentioned that in the movie. He briefly talked about it
because it's just so heavy. And the sad thing is that it's definitely true. I mean, even to this day, I'm sure that there are some black kids out there who are upset about being black, you know, and it's just a thing that you have to see to realize that there is racism out there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too, because I know in the film, and we kind of mentioned it before, about how seems to me that he's trying to use bringing a black man into the major leagues as a way just to gain more money. But I feel like from the way at least he was portrayed on the screen, and like certain things that you read online about him, it's like you can tell that it was actually more to him than just money. But I feel like he might have been using the whole like, oh, money is the reason why I'm doing it, to appeal to other white men to allow him to join into the major leagues.
Well, I mean, let's think about it. He is a businessman. He knows that in order to be successful, you have to be strategic. In order to get what you want, you have to kiss ass a little bit. So if that means like saying, hey, we should do this to save us money, like I would do the same thing. I would fucking say it. But what I really mean, what I'm really trying to get is what I want.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I wanted to say was he's a little petty motherfucker too. So he was one of, there was like 4 owners of the Dodgers. He was one of them. And another one passed away. And so one of the guys, Walter O'Malley, was trying to take control of them, or the Dodgers. And so he offered to buy out Mr. Ricky's portion, his ownership of the Dodgers. And so Mr. Rickey's like, yeah, sure. And then last minute offered it to a friend for $1 million, which forced Walter to offer more money. So he eventually got 1.05 million out of that, which is to this day, or what it is today, is $10,756,454, or like roughly that. So to me, to me, again, I don't think he really cared about the money. I think he just did it to like,
screw. And that's, I mean, honestly, even in the film, that's how he was kind of portrayed, as someone who was like, okay, well, you're gonna do this, well, then I'm gonna like do this to you because of I want it my way and all that stuff. So I don't know, I kind of like that. He's kind of like an ornery old man who's like, well, this is what I want, so this is what I'm gonna do to get what I want.
Exactly. So yeah, I think Mr. Rickey is a very honorable man. He did what he could with his white privilege.
Especially for that time too. Like that was to even, I don't know, like for now, like obviously now, like we are in the whole movement of like people being activists and all that stuff. But I feel like to be that type of person back then, it's like even more like intense or like kind of admirable because of all, things people could say. But I think he was also a very powerful man at the time. So that's why it also wasn't as hard on him, if that makes sense. Because he was already established and like had a lot of money and all that stuff.
I think his aunt was also an activist, but I don't think for like racism. I think for something for another issue. So I think there was like activism in his family. But on top of that, I do agree that like, some of the things that helped him out was his, how he's like influential and in the baseball world and also had money and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he was already well respected. And
exactly. Because a lot of the managers in the major leagues did not want to be the first ones to break the color barrier. Rickey was more than happy to do that.
They were scaredy cats. Do you want to say anything about Rachel?
I just wanted to say she is one smart cookie. They did meet in UCLA. She got a bachelor's in nursing, and then when Jackie retired, she went back and got her master's. She's just like one smart lady, and she's still alive. She's 98.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn.
Crazy.
I wonder if is she like still with it or like
dude, okay, let me just say.
I mean, if she's smart, she's probably with the latest. I just honestly, I'd be interested. I don't know. It's always interesting people who were going through like this type of stuff way back then, and then I just want to know what their like opinion is on like stuff that's currently going on in the world.
Well, let me just say, I saw she did like obviously you guys probably watched too. Like she did interviews for when this was released in 2013. So think about that was 7 years ago. So she was 91 years old then. And did she look good?
Oh wow. Yes. I didn't see it. But I did see some pictures of her and she was older and she didn't look that old though in the pictures I saw.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like she did not look like she was in her 90s. She was in her 90s, guys. 90s. 90s. So that is like insane to me because
because Jackie Robinson died in the 70s, right?
Right. So you died in 1972, I believe. Yeah.
Dang, that's a long time to live after your husband. Yeah. I was gonna say that's like another Eliza right there.
She was very. It's like that is very similar because after he passed away, she started the Jackie Robinson Foundation, a not-for-profit organization providing educational and leadership opportunities for minority students. The foundation has provided support for over 1,000 minority students, and it has maintained a 97% graduation rate among its scholars. So
that's pretty cool.
In 2017, Rachel received the Buck O'Neil Lifetime Achievement Award from the Baseball Hall of Fame. And with that award, Rachel and Jackie became the first married couple to reside alongside each other in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And she considered this a huge honor. And that's the other thing to me is that when I saw like she considered this a huge honor is that she doesn't take anything for granted. Like all this stuff has happened in her life, and she sounds like a lady who just is so grateful for every achievement that anything like
she's had some pretty major achievements.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some of the players that were on his team because I know we both I want to talk about Pee Wee. And
Oh
you
yeah,
also want
okay.
to
For a
talk
long
about
time,
him.
I thought that was his real name. I was like Pee Wee. I guess in the South you name your kid Pee Wee.
Because I mean, of course, I'm always interested in like the relationships of like people and to see if those are like, real life events that happened.
I liked Pee Wee, like kind of one of the best
Yeah.
out of my
And
team.
so, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, the whole team, like, they said it multiple times how like the times are changing and kind of a thing. And so, like, obviously, all of them weren't exactly thrilled to have a black man on their team. But I feel like as soon as they kind of saw his humanity and they realized, this is another person like me, then I think that's when they all kind of were like, okay, like, obviously, I'm going to accept this person and not see them just for the color of their skin, but, and also stand up for them and whatnot in front of the public. But so one thing that I specifically wanted to look up was to see if that embrace happened between him and then also to see if the thing, which I think we can also talk about later, too, about his other, what was his other teammate's name? Eddie Stanky, is that his name? To see if those two incidents actually happened. And I mean, for what I could saw, that the one with I'm sorry, I already forgot Eddie Stanky, that one did happen pretty like exactly like how it was depicted almost in the film. And I wanted to see if the whole thing with the pee, because in the movie it kind of seemed just not out of nowhere, but it was just like kind of random, like they kind of just threw it in there, and I was like, what? And so I was like, okay, I have to see if this actually happened, because like why would they put that in there if it didn't actually happen? So I mean, obviously they said that it did happen, that he was like has embraced him and stuff, but they don't know if that like specific instance of when it happened, like in the film.
The other thing that is that like it's in the movie they showed that he received that letter, and that's what kind of pushed him to embrace Jackie a little bit more. But to me, when I was looking into it, looked like he kind of he never had any negative. It was never negative, but I guess he wasn't.
I was gonna say, it didn't seem like he ever had negative feelings towards Jackie. I think he just felt like he didn't want to disappoint
that's
people.
what I was saying. I was like, because even the other
know.
guy was like, my friends back home would never forgive me. So I think that's what it was kind of like you're just it's different. It's something you're not used to seeing or having to like be around or anything like that. So I think that's why. But I think overall he didn't really care, and he saw how his Jackie was being taunted and kind of just did that to kind of show his support for his teammate in front of people.
You know what? I just hated it because he was like, I want them to know who I really am.
Yeah. It was very cheesy how they portrayed it in the film. And that's why I was just like, what the heck? But I mean, I understand why they put it in, just because, like I think they were trying to show the team shifting into the different frame of mind and everything. But it was just kind of random how they did it.
I'm sure they wanted to show the embrace, but I don't think they know the actual conversation that happened. So they had to make it up, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's so important that they build a
statue I know, right?
of it.
Well, because there are,
so they had to put it in there.
Photos of them embracing, and even I forget the other guy's name. There's just too many people for me to remember their names, but and another guy. It wasn't the Eddie Stanky guy. It was another dude. I forget, but basically, there's like pictures of all three of them actually, like like embracing Jackie, and ones of just Pee Wee and Jackie embracing each other. Which I mean, even though like it was obviously being silly, not silly, but it was like, okay, what the heck in the film. But I think in real life in general, like the statement behind that, it was very pivotal for people too, and important for people to see, obviously, in order to embrace Jackie as a player in the MLB as well.
What I found was the whole like, it's super annoying how they don't know if it's not in 1947 or 1948, like which game it actually happened at. But basically, it just says you began to get that feeling that the racists knew that they were in the minority and that they may still be racist to the core, but at least their mouths were shut and you never heard them again.
Which I wish people were just like that now.
About Pee Wee, right? He said he had little to no experience interacting with minorities. According to Pee Wee, his meeting with Jackie marked the first time in his life that he had shaken hands with a black man. He had no particular prejudice either. And he said that his father had made him aware of racial injustice by showing him a tree where a lynching occurred. So I'm sure seeing that at a young age, because I mean, they even showed in the movie how kids aren't racist, right? And they kind of turn into racist by their surroundings. So I'm sure like showing what happens because of racism.
Yeah, I hated that.
I
hated that. JC and I hated that so much. The part where the kid's in the stands and the dad is yelling all that racist stuff and the kid's looking around like, I know this is wrong, but I'm going to go with it because my dad's doing it. It must be okay. That was crappy, but it's true. And that's, it's still going on today.
Well,
it sucks though. I hated it.
Well, you could just tell that even with Pee-wee kind of saying that again is how that stuck with him, how he could see that there was racial injustice happening in the world, so that it made an impression on him basically, and that happened when he was a young kid. I liked a lot of his quotes where one of them he said, "You can hate a man for many reasons, color is not one of them." And then what else did he say? He said something like, because a lot of the things when they were talking about Jackie joining the team, everyone's like, "Oh, are you concerned? Are you concerned?" And he's like, "The only concern I have is that he takes my job." And then when they ask him more about that, he's like, "Well, if he takes my job, he's entitled to it." So it's like, yeah, he was worried about them, or he was worried about Jackie taking his job, but not to the point where like he was gonna hate him for it, or like, it was like, no, you deserve it. I mean, I feel threatened, but if you get it, you deserve it.
Yeah, it just makes you the better player. Yeah.
The other thing I thought was very, very interesting was the petition that they talked about. Pee-wee said he told his friend who is like a reporter, and he said that essentially the petition said something like, if you bring up the N-word, trade us, we won't play. And then apparently when Pee-wee refused to sign it, the petition was dropped and it died. So, but that didn't happen in the movie, right? He just like he was just like, no, I'm not going to sign it.
Yeah, he's just like, no, thanks.
I mean, I don't know if Pee-wee had that much of an influence on his team like that, but I mean, it's just like a rumor. It's just what we heard. The other thing about Pee-wee and Jackie is like Pee-wee helped keep Jackie's morale up. He would like crack jokes to break the tension. He would say stuff like, Jack, some of these guys are throwing at you because you're black, but others are just doing it because they just plain hate you. Oh, sorry. They just plain don't like you. And they were such good friends. And later when Jackie became the second baseman and Pee-wee's the shortstop, they became the most effective defense pair in sports history.
Nice.
And then Pee-wee was also a pallbearer for Jackie's funeral. It just shows that Pee-wee was just a good guy. There are some good people. And it's funny because they also made a judgment on him because he was raised in the South. So they thought, oh, you're raised in the South. You're going to be one of the racist guys. You're going to be the one that's going to be on our side, who's going to sign this petition, who's going to be, who wants Jackie off the team. And Pee-wee also turned it around on them and was like, nah, he's my homie. And y'all can get him off the team like that. Okay. Not with me.
That kind of reminds me of the scene too in the film, where Jackie and Rachel were just walking on the street, and then that man like comes like storming up to them, and you think something's about to go down. Then he's like, "Want you to know, I think what you're doing is good," or something like that.
I love that.
And I know I liked it, but I was just like, "Oh God!" They like, were like, "Oh my God, what's about to happen?" But that kind of reminds me of that. Like you have a certain expectation of how certain people are going to react or act, and it ends up being different, which is cool. So let's talk about the Ben Chapman ball game incident. So I wanted to look up that too because I was like, okay, did this really happen? Well, first, okay, what prompted me to like look into if that scenario was actually a real scenario was because of how when they took their photo together and how like Jackie Robinson was like, oh, I'm gonna just hold the bat to see, so we don't have to touch. So I wanted to see if that was actually a thing that was said between them, but I couldn't find anything to say that.
But in the picture, they were holding the bat.
Yeah, they were holding the bat and everything that way. But I just wanted to know if, like, specifically, I knew Jackie didn't want to take the picture with him. But I just want to know if if they actually did. But so the incident did occur, and Ben Chapman was known for being a bigot. And the thing that I think is kind of hilarious about him is that he claims he wasn't a bigot because he would say other vulgar or like slurs to people who were also of Italian, Irish, and Jewish descent, as if like that's like, oh, well, I can't be racist because I do that to all these other minority groups as well. And I'm like, seriously, that's your defense?
Excuse.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting because he said that. And but yeah, they did end up taking that photo together.
He was fired from the Philadelphia Phillies, and then he did come back to coach for the 1952 Cincinnati Reds, and that was it.
Yeah. And he also too tried to excuse his actions as being like, oh, I was just trying to rile up the other opposing team and all this other stuff. And it's like, come on, you knew what you were doing, and I feel like that was just him trying to hide, he's trying to hide behind, oh, that's what just people do or whatever. Da, da, da. And I'm like, come on, dude.
Yeah,
it's
I
kind
hated
of
it.
to me. So just to kind of if no one's seen the movie or know what happens, is that during one of the games, he was the Philadelphia Phillies manager, and he was calling Jackie the N-word from the dugout. He was yelling that he should go back to the cotton fields.
And he called him a monkey or something like that too. And I was like,
yeah. This is just what we're saying is probably one of the few things that he was saying. I'm sure he was saying a lot more horrible things. And then this is also what you were saying, how Ed Stanky went over there and confronted him, was telling him to stop. And that was also something that happened. And the biggest thing that happened after this whole thing in the movie is showed that he went to the that run or that hallway where he hit his bat to kind of apparently that didn't happen to Rachel, and one of the players said that didn't happen in real life, but we all still don't know for sure. Is that it really did unite the team, the Dodgers team, because they saw that type of abuse happen to Jackie, and I think all of them could not stand for it. And again, in the movie, they did speak about how this increased sympathy for Jackie. So not only from the team, but also from a lot of people in the major leagues, and even some people, the crowd and the audience and stuff like that. And then I saw that he was interviewed in the 90s, and he said, a man learns about things and mellows out as he grows older. I think that maybe I've changed a bit. Maybe I went in too far in those days, but I always went along with a bench jokingly. And I'm like,
he's still making an excuse, right?
Exactly. No, it totally is. He was like, maybe I was rougher than some of the other players. I thought that you could use it to upset and weaken the other team. It might give you an advantage if the world changes. And he says, reflecting on the success of his son, who coaches black players on an integrated football team. He said, so proud I've raised my son different, and he gets along with them well. They like him, and that's a nice thing, don't you think? So I'm like, he's using how his son coaches, an integrated football team as hey, see, I'm good, good job, you raised a good son, but at the same time, he could also see
his son is a different person from him. So you can't take credit for something someone else is doing or whatever. But it's just I was just happy that he didn't last very long in his career because of that. Because clearly that just to me shows that he was genuinely a bigot and somebody that people didn't really like working with and wasn't willing to change. Because if he was willing to change, then he probably would have still stayed in as a manager or whatever. Because I think that's kind of the whole point of them having Jackie Robinson join, the major leagues, was kind of to spark some change and see that how's everyone was saying throughout the movie too, times are changing and you got to either change with them or you're going to be left kind of behind, which is why that one guy, I forget his name, because he wanted to be traded but then he wasn't traded. So I think that's kind of the same thing that was going on with Ben. He just wasn't willing to change with the times, so he got dropped.
The other thing is that I didn't see this as an actual quote. The manager, Leo, that I was just talking about, how he said the whole, I don't care if he's yellow, black, or has stripes. In the movie, they said he's not, you guys shouldn't be threatened, or you guys need to get over this because he's not going to be the first and one and only black player that's going to come into the league. There's more of them coming, and it's totally true. If you aren't willing to embrace this, guess what? Jackie's not the only one.
After the press tour that Chapman went on, to basically say, "Oh, I didn't mean it. We were just hazing him because that's what we always do," type of a thing. Brian Trickey said, quote, that Chapman did more than anybody to unite the Dodgers when he poured out that string of abuse. He solidified and unified 30 men, not one of whom was willing to sit by and see someone kick around a man who had his hands tied behind his back. Chapman made Jackie a real member of the Dodgers. and that was from Jackie's autobiography. I thought that
and
was
that's
interesting.
true about that. How Eddie Stinky, when he defended Jackie, how he was like, "You're doing this against someone who you know cannot defend himself." Like he like is basically you're like
exactly.
hitting someone who's tied up against a wall.
I don't know if this was just me when I was watching it, but I thought like I didn't even realize until afterwards, and maybe that's earlier, Nicole, why I didn't know that you were talking about the Stanky and Chapman incident. When I watched it, it took me a little bit to realize that he was the manager of the team. I thought he was a player at the time because he was like in their uniform, but then like later I was like, he's a manager and he said, "Oh, that's awful." Like it's like one thing for like the players to say that, but the manager, geez, that is a bad look.
Especially when like a lot of them were trying to make that change. The next thing I wanted to just briefly talk about was the ankle spike incident that happened in the film where I think he was he running? No, he was on base, right? And then someone came and ran.
Yeah, he was on
and
base.
ran and stepped. I just was interested to know if that actually happened. And
right? It's like, is this real or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I know it's not very like important in the grand scheme of his whole story, but I was like, I want to know if that actually happened.
It is.
I mean, it's kind of important because like in the movie, they had him getting hit by a baseball and like a couple times he got hit a couple times because there were teams and players that were telling other players hit him on purpose. So I kind of the whole ankle spiking thing kind of goes along with whether or not I did it on purpose or
and then
anyway, continue.
And how even during the interview, he was like, "How are you going to write this story to the reporters?" You know, because they were like, "Are you calling the other player a liar?"
Yeah.
He's like, "What? How are you going to write this?" So it's just the same way how like, they were trying to turn him against.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
but yeah, so I mean, obviously that did actually happen. I guess the player, what was his name? Slaughter. That's a funny last name.
I know. I was like, is that a nickname? Or is that a real last
name? He was known for doing that type of stuff. And like, it's like kind of the same thing too, like as Chapman. It's like when they were asking him about it, he was like, "Oh, I've done that to all kinds of players." Like as that, like that's an excuse. He's like, "I don't have anything against a black player, but like I do this to like I've done this before." And like whatever. I'm like, okay, how is that like an excuse for your actions? Like that's so stupid.
And he was blaming the writers too. Or like he's like, yeah, they happened, but he was trying to like when the story all came out and everything like that, because they were kind of obviously making it seem like it was super purposeful because he was so upset that Jackie was in the major leagues, and he was like blaming the writers about that, and he's like, I'm a Southern boy and I give honest answers, and they turned it this way. It's like, oh my god,
yeah, like, stupid.
Anyways,
but yeah.
So wait, how bad was the injury? It was like a 7-inch gash in his leg.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy though.
Yeah,
because that's why I was also interested, because in the film they didn't really like show him like staying out of the game or anything after that injury. It was kind of just something that like they briefly again kind of just showed real fast, and then they like moved on to the next scene.
He was also trying to say like he like did an interview, I think in the late 80s or mid to late 80s, and he was saying how like, so basically Jackie was on first base, and he kept his foot there when he was ready to catch the ball, and when Enos was like running around and turning the corner from first to go to second, as he turned that corner, that's when he spiked Jackie. And then and he was saying that like him and Jackie were friends before that incident, and how like it was all, like you said, like all fun and game. I'm like, okay, were you really and he was saying like he was friends with Jackie even before he was in the major leagues. I'm like, okay, really? Were you? Like, it's really hard to believe. And then I know,
especially if he said, okay, like if he's your friend, then why would you do that to him?
I know,
like, who knew what you were doing?
Like, okay, and also do you not practice? Like, come on, do you like also spike your freaking teammates like that too? It's I mean, I'm sure an accident happens here and there, but I don't know. I just don't think that didn't sound like an accident at all. And he also was like saying how he was really upset that this incident has followed him for like the rest of his life because it was just so untrue. I'm like, whatever, get over it. Oh, hold on. Whatever, major.
Oh my. Stupid. What is it? Ed Charles? So, okay. So when I was watching the movie,
Hmm.
obviously, they showed the little kid, and I
Hmm.
didn't think, I mean, I kind of had an inkling. I was like, okay, this kid is gonna have some, like, something, there's some, who's
Yeah.
some, I don't know, just because of the times that they showed him, it just seemed kind of random. Not
I
random, but
love
it's
what the
like,
kid
it's just,
said. What did he say? He's like, he disembobulated.
oh yeah, discombobulated the man or something like that.
Yeah.
The mom's like, what? They're just
Yeah.
scared. But yeah, so I wanted to see if he, well, was a actually somebody that had what is it, like, met Jackie Robinson, or had they crossed paths or anything like that. But yeah, what I found was that they didn't actually cross paths, but I think he was basically, he was saw Jackie
Mentor,
Robinson, and he like was
role
also like,
model.
yeah, like a role model or whatever. I don't know. But anyways, but he did see him as, like, yeah, as you said, a role model, and he was actually, someone who was in the World Series and all of that
Hmm.
stuff. But I just thought it was interesting that they put him in there as if
Well,
um,
he did attend Jackie's games.
yeah, but he wasn't acting. They
Yeah,
never
he
actually like met or anything like that, or he
No,
never.
no.
Yeah.
no, no.
Okay, that
No, okay,
seems
so
weird.
you're talking about just the part in the movie where at the train station he throws him the baseball.
Yes, and well, that, and
Yeah,
he went.
that never happened.
Yeah, but I guess
That
he
was so
did
like,
actually listen to the train tracks and say that Jackie Robinson was, like, he could hear him or whatever on the train.
Yeah. Yeah, that part did happen.
Yeah, because I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
no, but I
yeah,
hated that baseball thing. Like, I don't see you. Now I'm gonna turn around and
I know. I was like, how did he even know he was there? But I think that was kind of just to show that the impact Jackie Robinson had on the next generation, and how he kind of paved the
Yeah,
way
exactly.
for other black characters, or black men, to join the Major League Baseball, or just
baseball.
anything, or
Yeah.
any other sport, or be in the public eye in that sense. So I mean, I see why they added him in, but I just wanted to look it up and be like, hey, was he actually
Yeah.
a
Well, I was
person?
also
Yeah.
curious if he motivated any other players. I mean, obviously Jackie, I'm sure motivated numerous of players that they can't even make a list out of.
Hmm.
But uh, yeah, I think Ed Charles was a good one to pick because he was really he actually was attending the games at the time of Jackie's.
Yeah. And I mean, that's even like, today, like how the whole, like, representation matters type of thing. And I think that is, especially in that time too, it's like it was very important for people, because I'm sure, I don't mean, I'm not sure, but I mean, who would know if, like, Jackie Robinson never, was
Mhm.
a player, like what that would mean for people who played now today, and
Oh, for sure,
yeah, or
definitely.
even want to play, because
Yeah,
that kid was so excited to see there was
a black.
someone, yeah, a black man
Mm,
playing. And so, yeah. And just encouraged him to
definitely.
pursue his dreams of one day winning the World Series.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Of course.
After Jackie's death, the MLB have done numerous things to honor his death in 1987, they renamed both the National and American League Rookie of the Year award to the Jackie Robinson Award. On April 15th, 1997, Jackie's jersey number 42 was retired throughout the Major League Baseball, and that was the first time any jersey number has ever been retired throughout one of the four Major League American sports. On April 15th, that also became the Jackie Robinson Day, which started in 2004, and players are allowed to wear the number 42 on that day. On the 60th anniversary of Jackie's debut in the Major League Baseball, they invited all the players to wear the number 42, and ultimately more than 200 players wore the number 42 from all different teams. In 2009, all MLB uniform personnel, including players, wore the number 42 on April 15th, and this tradition has continued every year since on that date. On November 22nd, 2014, UCLA announced that they would officially retire the number 42 across all university sports, effective immediately.
Oh.
Even though Jackie wore different numbers while he was at UCLA, everyone really identifies the number 42 with
Yeah.
Jackie Robinson, which is why they chose that number. So Jackie's jersey was brought home after his rookie season ended in 1947 and was sold at an auction for 2.05 million on November 19th, 2017, and that's the highest price ever paid for a post World War II jersey.
It's crazy.
So yeah, the number 42 is really, it's like super associated to Jackie Robinson with a lot of athletes, like how Kobe Bryant is associated with number 8 and 24. And same with April 15th, that is Jackie Robinson Day. So clearly the MLB have done what they can. And also, I feel like this comes from the community as well, just honoring Jackie Robinson in every way that they can.
Mm-hmm.
Because without
Yeah.
him, without all of this, we wouldn't have what we have in the Major League Baseball
Yeah.
right now.
I was gonna say, I was like, I think it also just serves as a reminder to everyone of how far we've come, and I mean, especially now too, like how much further we have to go. But I think it's just a reminder to be like, hey, this is like, don't forget about like this time
Yes.
in like the MLB specifically of what it used to be like and what we've accomplished in that regard.
So to me, what I think that when I think of like a player, like, so, I mean, this just what I want to say is a difference between like Kobe Bryant and Jackie Robinson is that we remember Kobe as an astonishing player, right? Think of all the games that he's made, think of all the shots that he's made, things like that. With Jackie Robinson, like I don't know him as a player, but what I know is how he paved the what they say, right? Like Jackie Robinson walked so the other players can run.
No, definitely.
I don't remember as the best player. I just remember him as the guy who like paved the way, and he couldn't have done that without his what is the right word to say? Like not I don't want to say patience, just his like resilience against the racism. You know, it is easy for someone to fight. It is much harder for someone to take it all in and not defend themselves in that physical way.
I think people recognize Jackie Robinson the name before they recognize him like as a player, because of just the things that he has done for the MLB and just for people in general and sports and all that stuff.
If you guys saw this, but leading back to my fact that I had earlier, which I thought was like crazy coincidental, but due to COVID, they had to delay the celebration of Jackie Robinson Day this year. And Chadwick Boseman actually died the day that they decided to celebrate Jackie Robinson Day. And I thought that was really
Yeah, I heard that.
Dude. I just got goosebumps. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So strange,
Yeah,
right?
I think I saw that somewhere too online. And I was like, what? I didn't click on it. I think it's because I didn't want to read it because I was just like, that's too sad.
But this whole entire thing to me, like with whole Black Lives Matter that has came up again, even though it's like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like I'm saying this completely wrong because like Black Lives Matter, period. But it's just that like, you know, a couple years ago, it was like really big and we were all about it. And then kind of, I feel like it kind of quieted down a little bit. And I think everyone kind of thought, oh, things have changed. Like everything's going good. And then this year happened and it's just like went straight up again. And to me, like watching the movie and just being more aware of everything is like, it's just like, no, like the racism, the Black lives, like they're still experiencing a lot that like I don't experience, right? And I'm sure you guys don't experience, you know, like just so many different things, little things, right? Like to me, something that I find like maybe this is like an example that is probably that maybe like we don't experience is that like how somebody can look at a resume and maybe take a guess at you know what race they are, and then you're technically not supposed to be discriminating against race when you're looking at resumes, but that's easy, right? Like you look at my name, you already know I'm fucking Asian, right? and they could do the same thing with you know.
See, I have that problem with gender.
Oh yeah, there's that too. Obviously, I can't even like talk.
Yeah, because it's like I have a boy's name.
I can't even like talk because I get so riled up about this. I just feel so bad that I can't like see.
Well, like, I can say something kind of about it too, because I feel like for me, I knew obviously we're alive right now, so we know what's currently going on in the world. But when I was watching the movie 42, it was kind of very weird seeing them portray things, how like segregation and racial tension and all that stuff back then, and how similar the things they were saying then about their fight to what people are currently still saying about the fight against racism and all that stuff. And it was just like weird to hear. I'm like, dang, like it's again, it was just showing me like, yeah, we've come a long way in like the certain things like, oh, we now have Black baseball players and we have like, you know, Black leaders in like sports and music, all that stuff. But it's like weird to like see that the other underlying fight underneath it is still currently going on, and we haven't really progressed that much in that sense. So that was just what was really interesting to me to see, because it's like, yeah, I know, but like the certain things like I said earlier, I think where I think it was Ricky who said this about how like the whole fight, like you have to have the courage not to do anything. And it's like interesting because I feel like that sentiment is still said to people, like to people of color, like we're expecting them to react and to protest in a certain way. And obviously, like right now, that's what people are saying to them, like, oh, like, with all their protests and stuff like that, like in the streets, and how people are interpreting them as that, them being too loud. And yeah, I guess I don't really know how to exactly formulate my thoughts on that, but it's like interesting to see that that is still an expectation that people have of Black people, is to protest or to kind of, I don't know, like do certain things in a certain way in order for them to be taken seriously, or to be have like to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, I can't, that's I guess the best way I can kind of do it. But yeah, it was just very interesting to me, that like parallel.
It's interesting too, because you hear about the protests that are happening and a lot of them are nonviolent, and it's the other people who are being violent. Like when they talked about the looting, that's not correlated, or I mean a little bit to the protests. We can't say it's not completely, but at the same time, it's like the protesters aren't the ones that are looting, right? Like the protesters are just trying to fight for rights, just trying to fight for like Black lives. That's it. They aren't trying to be violent or they aren't violent at all.
I mean, that even that in and of itself too is like, reminds me of the frustrations Jackie Robinson felt when he was, trying to kind of protest in his way. And when he said in the beginning to Ricky, like, oh, you want someone who won't fight or whatever. And to me, that's just like, because, he's obviously dealt with that his whole life. So he's reached a point where he's going to start calling people out for what they're doing. And I feel like, to me, that's just kind of reflecting in today's society. People are like, okay, well, we've been quiet for too long, so now we're going to start saying things. We're going to start doing stuff because this is the only way we're getting any type of attention on our cause or our fight.
The thing is that this is something we need to improve on every single day of our lives, right? Like for me, like I try to be conscious of it every single day, like whatever I'm saying, whatever I feel, like whatever privilege I have in my life, I have to think about how I shouldn't take that for granted, or I shouldn't, because that's not the privilege for other people. And that, I shouldn't take that, whatever I get, I shouldn't like also be, I'm greedy about it, I guess, and like take that away from somebody else who might be more deserving of it. It's just, I don't know. It's just like, to me, my head's going in circles. But
I mean, yeah, it's a hard topic to discuss, especially considering people don't want to acknowledge things that they've done possibly wrong in the past or are currently doing wrong. Because even like when we were going to school, like I did a lot of like gender and like whatever classes like that. And we talked about it a lot, in that things that you're just ingrained in you to like do, like how we've been taught to do, it's hard to break those. So when you notice that you're doing it, you have to like kind of check yourself and realize, okay, why am I doing this? How can I like stop doing it and check it and like change the course of whatever you're doing. And it's something that we've discussed too, where it's like, it's a constant thing. You're never going to stop kind of finding yourself doing those types of things, but you have to realize that, okay, recognize that you're doing it and just keep going from there and just checking yourself constantly. So, I mean, I think that's one of the big problems too. That's kind of going on.
I think that's what that's like my thing that I want to like say to everybody, is that like, you just have to, check yourself, because at the end of the day, nothing is completely solved. You're not perfect, right? And you are subconsciously you might be doing something like that isn't helping the cause, and when you should be. And it's crazy because like, to me, like, I guess I didn't think like racism was like that bad. I thought as like, as bad as like previously. And plus, living in San Francisco, it's such more liberal over here and stuff like that. It's crazy. So like Luis is like darker than me. He's kind of like, I don't think he's a dark Mexican, but he's like darker than me. And he would say it all the time, like how when you go to a store, like everyone's like looking at him like as if he's gonna steal something. And I'm like, oh my God, you're being so dramatic. Like I was like, you think everyone's looking at you, but they're not. And it wasn't until like I started going to stores with him that I would see the difference between the way people would look at him when he's walking by himself to when I approach him, as his girlfriend. And then people would like stop looking. They're like, oh, okay, if she's with him, like everything's fine. And that's where I was like, holy crap, that's not okay. I did want to talk about Chadwick because, not only did we watch this movie because of Jackie, it's because of Chadwick and
I guess
crying.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely our way to honor him as well as talk. I mean, guess we're honoring two people right now because we're talking about Jackie Robinson and his life, but we also were brought in to watch this movie about Jackie Robinson because of Chadwick Boseman, and we wanted to kind of honor him and talk about him a little bit because of his recent passing, and this was just kind of our way of doing that. And
So
yeah, it was
I
just
just like wrote a brief thing about him. Basically, Chadwick Aaron Boseman was born and raised in Anderson, South Carolina. He initially wanted to write and direct, and then started learning how to act to kind of relate more to actors. He lived in Brooklyn, and that's where he started his career. And he was actually a drama instructor. Then he moved to LA in 2008 to pursue an acting career. One crazy thing was in 2003, he was hired to act in the daytime soap opera All My Children, but was fired after voicing concern to the producers about racist stereotypes in the script. And the role was then given to Michael B. Jordan.
oh wow.
Chadwick was directing an off-Broadway play in the East Village when he auditioned to be Jackie Robinson in 42 and was considering giving up acting and pursuing directing full-time at the time, and then landed the star role. And then obviously kind of what am I trying to say? It kind of pushed his acting career, right? So after that, he was in much more movies. And then in 2016, we saw him as the Black Panther. So in 2016, Chadwick was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, and on August 28th, 2020, he passed away at his home as a result of complications related to colon cancer. His death was compared to unexpected deaths of young Black celebrities in 2020, like Kobe Bryant and Naya Rivera. On August 29th, the day after his passing, the tweet in which his family announced his death on his Twitter account became the most liked tweet ever, with more than 6 million likes in under 24 hours, accumulating over 7 million by August 31st, far displacing the previous record holder. I'm choking up. MLB and the LA Dodgers issued statements honoring Chadwick, and when Lewis Hamilton won the 2020 I want to say Belgian, but spelled differently, Belgian Grand Prix, he dedicated the win to Chadwick. The South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster ordered the state house flags to be lowered to half staff on August 30th in honor of Chadwick. On the same day, ABC played Black Panther without any commercials, followed by a retrospect of Boseman's life and career titled Chadwick Boseman, A Tribute for a King. MTV's VMAs ceremony was dedicated to Chadwick, and on the 28th of August, Change.org started a petition seeking to replace a Confederate monument in his hometown, Anderson, with a statue of Chadwick, which I signed.
Dang, I didn't even know that.
So go to change.org and sign that petition. So as I was curious, I'm sure everyone else is as well, like about the Black Panther sequel. And I'm basically reading what it says on Wikipedia. In August 2020, following the death of Bozeman from colon cancer, Ryan, the writer and director of Black Panther, stated that he had been unaware of Chadwick's illness and had spent the last year preparing, imagining, and writing words for him to say in the sequel that we weren't destined to see. Kevin, the producer of Black Panther, and other executives at Marvel Studios involved on the Black Panther films were also unaware of Chadwick's illness. So prior to his death, filming was expected to begin in March 2021. And the actors, his sister, the warrior, I don't know who, I forgot his name, the white guy, sorry, in the movie. Martin, he also plays the Hobbit. Martin will reprise their role in the film, and it's scheduled to release on May 6, 2022.
Yeah, I
don't know what direction they're going to go in.
Well, I think I saw something that's saying that they basically are going to have write his death off screen like it happened before, the movie, and then it's going to have Shuri as like the new Black Panther, but it's going to be basically her kind of living in his shadow and dealing with like all of that as the Black Panther now. But I just
want to say one thing. So I think like Friday I watched Endgame, And there's a scene, I'm going to start crying. There is a scene. So it's after Iron Man snaps his fingers, and everyone's like, the bad guys are fading into dust. And there's like this moment where Chadwick is like looking at everything like, wow, and it's just him. And it's just like, he's like kind of to the side of the screen. And I don't know, that just like, it was just kind of this moment. It was like, like, I'm like, was that always there? Like, it was, I'm like super heartbroken over this. I don't know him personally, and
I mean, it's very sad. Yeah, I was just gonna say too, like, I feel like Chadwick and Jackie Robinson did have like a lot of things in common, and like the things that they like stood for, and that's why I'm like, dang, like, even I don't know, just like watching it too, I'm like, dang, I feel like, and like things hearing about Chadwick and like what he said and the things he kind of fought for or whatever, and I'm just like, he was the perfect person to play Jackie Robinson too, because I feel like they both kind of had that, like, mentality and thoughts on how things should progress in the world.
And I think the Black Panther, because you hear that he always wanted to kind of fight that racial injustice, like even with the part that he played where he got fired for questioning, or like be kind of a hero and represent a Black hero for the younger Black kids out there. I think that's really, really important. I'm sorry. I just think, for me personally, like, I remember being a little kid and seeing the yellow Power Ranger and seeing her as like the Asian Power Ranger. It was like, yeah, and I'm sure like little Black kids out there, when they saw Black Panther, they were like, yeah.
Well, yeah, so. I think that definitely, like we said earlier too, with that Ed Charles dude, it's like, I think people, like, they do have, like, they have their thoughts on why they're doing certain things, but then like there's other impacts that they have, so like, of course this is going to impact some younger kid, and maybe even like not even necessarily just be a hero, maybe he wants to like be an actor or a director or whatever because of the films that he saw of Chadwick Boseman, and he wants to follow in his footsteps, or like that inspired them as a child.
I think that you can be there's probably actors out there, I feel bad because I'm thinking about Mulan, but there's probably actors out there who there's actors out there who play this role, like represent in this type of way, but don't really feel that passionately about like the other stuff that's going on in the world. And Chadwick clearly wasn't that type of person. And that's where I'm kind of like, that's where you could see how his passion shows in the roles that he plays, because he wants to fight those injustice and he wants to be representative for the younger kids out there. So he was a perfect representation.
So yeah, thanks for joining us this week on The Internet Historians. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast and give us a rating. We would also love to connect with you, so give us a follow on Instagram, where we give sneak peeks into the subjects of our episodes. And next week, we will be discussing Queen Mary Stuart from the movie Mary, Queen of Scots. So don't forget to tune in, and thanks again, and we will see you next week. Bye. Bye.